Good morning and good afternoon, everybody. I am Alexander Kafka, and I will be moderating this second webinar in our series. And once again, it's my pleasure to thank International Visegrad Fund for supporting this project. As we have already observed, the Visegrad Group has experienced serious political disagreements among the member states, yet cooperation has often been preserved in areas that are less politically sensitive, but still strategically vital, such as academic exchange, scientific research, and environmental policy. Georgia and the South Caucasus in general face a different political and institutional context, but similar risks. Deepening polarization, fragile institutions, and shared environmental and scientific challenges. So my first question is how science and environment can survive politics? Can we talk about a technical buffer or non-political glue that allowed the Visegrad Group to maintain cooperation despite political disagreements?
Thank you for invitation, Alexander, and greetings to all panelists. My name is David DONDUA. I'm a diplomat, former Georgian diplomat, now residing in Vienna, Austria, and I'm here on an international position, but besides my diplomatic job, I am chairing the EU Awareness Center, which is a Brussels-based think tank. Now a few words on our topic, and particularly on your question, Alexander, whether scientific and academic cooperation can survive political turbulences. The short answer to this is yes. We diplomats call it track to diplomacy. When political channels are blocked due to different reasons, then societies are using other ways to bypass the political roadblocks. Georgia is now facing a growing tension with the EU and the democratic world. You know that political channels are limited, and the country risks self-isolating itself from European networks. And it's not just about politics. It may affect, and as far as I know, it is already affecting academic and scientific cooperation. And here, joint research, exchanges, conferences, data sharing, all the things that keep service alive are becoming more and more difficult to maintain, as I know from my friends and colleagues back in my country. And this is where the Visegrad experience can be really useful, to the best of my knowledge. And I remember in Central Europe, and particularly on a Visegrad territory, when political disagreements were serious, countries still continued working together on science, on environment, and these networks managed to operate regardless of politics. And I will repeat myself, for Georgia, this shows that in current situation, scientific cooperation can serve as a form of, as we used to say, track to diplomacy, a way to maintain ties with Europe when political dialogue is blocked.
Thank you very much, Dato. I see that Mr. Juraj Marusiak raised his hand. Please go ahead.
Regarding the question is there a kind of non-political glue between Visegrad Group countries, we can see that really in the period when Visegrad Group, the Visegrad cooperation on the political level is stagnating, and it's is simply marginalized by not only by particular governments but also by the European Union institutions. Simply their single thing connecting Visegrad Group countries or some things are firstly business because still these countries are very close trade partners, and the second thing is the very presence of international Visegrad Fund. So these are two main elements of internal cohesion of Visegrad Group. So regardless, sometimes even in the past, very tense political relations between Visegrad Group countries and very radical changes in the architecture of Visegrad Group, because we remember at least two models of Visegrad Group as 2+2, as two pro-European countries, Slovakia, Czech Republic, two Eurosceptic countries like Hungary and Poland, with the tense relations with Brussels. Then Visegrad 3+1 after the outbreak of the war in Ukraine, and now 2+2, on one side Slovakia, Hungary plus Hungary, on the other side Czech Republic plus Poland, but with some changes in the attitude of Czech Republic towards Ukraine. We see that regardless a very low level of political communication, of the communication on the peak of Visegrad Group countries, and almost lack of political communication on the level of prime ministers or ministers of foreign affairs, this single group institution, International Visegrad Fund, is still continuing to work, and there is no Visegrad participant country saying, okay, we shall stop financing International Visegrad Fund. So it shows that still persists the interest to preserve at least some certain level of political cooperation, especially on the non-political cooperation, but the cooperation on the grassroots level, and it might become kind of a platform for the restart of Visegrad cooperation. Then the second thing, business. All in the past, Poland had been perceived as the weakest partner of Visegrad Group in 1990s. Nowadays, Poland is gradually becoming an economic leader of the group, and especially Czech Republic and Slovakia, but as general Central Eastern Europe is becoming a kind of natural field of expansion of Polish business. Also, the projects of, for example, high-speed railways are debated just on the level of Visegrad Group, or on the level of the construction of these connections between Visegrad Group countries, and of course not to forget the project of North-South corridor, gas corridor. It is during the last years, the single successful Visegrad Group project, the project of interconnectors between gas pipeline systems. It is really a successful project. So, but what are the limits of cooperation, especially on the level of infrastructure building? Those are finances, and we now we can see that without European financial support from European Union, without political support of European Union, Visegrad Group is not able to perform any of its projects, any of its initiatives. So this Visegrad Group can act as a successful actor only within the European Union, not outside the European Union.
Thank you very much, Juraj. If I mispronounce any names, please do correct me.
I'm a member of environmental NGO Arnika, and also I'm part of academia at the Czech Academy of Science at the Institute of Contemporary History. And I think there were some examples recently in the Czech case, especially after the new government was set up this fall. I guess most of you are familiar with that. So in the Czech context, we speak about like Slovak and Hungarian scenery a bit in this sense. So big pressure on non-governmental and civic sector, ostracization of civic sector, and we expect this pressure to be growing also within the academic sphere. However, what I think is and was important until now, both within academia and within the civic sector and mutual cooperation, was, or this is at least my perception, that there is like big pro-democratic consensus in both of those spheres. And this is like very important baseline for cooperation and some sort of influence over public discussion. And this is another aspect that I wanted to point out, the ability to co-create discussion and to maintain some of the important democratic values within public discussion. This is like my even like scientific trust that discourse is extremely important in maintaining democratic culture, and academia and non-governmental sector, and if we speak about environmental sector, they need each other in order to create this. And so the last very recent example, and I think this is go on in the Czech case, where protests against the new Minister of the Environment, which were organized in Prague, mostly by environmental activists. However, academia was involved as well. And it was one of the biggest environmental protests since Velvet Revolution. It was about 5,000 people at the Prague Castle Square. So I think this is some like positive signal that civil society in cooperation with academia is active, is responding towards the political developments, and there is some like pro-democratic baseline in both of these spheres that is like maintained, that is agreed on, and provides platform to respond to, let's say, anti-democratic tendencies within the government. Maybe to provide context, the new Minister of Environment is from the Motorist Party. So basically the agenda of the Minister of Environment is to destruct the environmental sector, the legislation, and also civic society organizations, its funding, etc. However, yeah, and maybe one last thing that I wanted to point out, what is important as well, at least this is what I perceive as a member of a non-governmental organization, is the network within civil society, within the environmental sector. We have the Green Circle, which is an association of environmental NGOs, which is able to network, coordinate, to advocate. So there is like there are like further actors that are able to coordinate like individual actors individual organizations and put together positions that stand in this opposition. So I definitely wouldn't speak about like a non-political glue, rather pro-democratic glue, which is some sort of shared baseline. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Ladislav, perhaps?
Yes.
Please.
Thank you very much. Just few comments, and I'm trying really to keep the perspective of our Georgian colleagues in this discussion. And I want to say that in some aspects, V4 Visegrad Group is based on maybe different historical links than may be relevant in Transcaucasus area. First of all, two of the four countries, Czechia and Slovakia, have been one state before. That's quite significant difference. And there is plenty of historical links here, which are persisting despite of different political developments, which are anyway, I mean, if you follow what is happening in Czech Republic and Slovakia politically, it is usually just a phase shift. It is the same things happening with some delay in one or another country, but having a very similar, let's say, main issues, main themes. But despite of it, there are plenty still alive familial, social, and cultural links between two countries, which are actually creating a good base for permanent contacts and mutual collaboration, despite of differences at the political or government level. In science, it is particularly strong. One of the reasons is, and probably the colleagues would confirm that, we are sometimes joking that the biggest university city of Slovakia is Brno, because there is plenty of Slovak young people studying in Czech universities. So this is creating the scientific links for the further development of career. And this is not the case with Poland or with Hungary. This is particularly typical for Czech and Slovak relation in science and education. And regarding Visegrad Fund, I agree with what was said by previous speakers, that irrespective of the political situation, it is still working as a gluing forum for at least some parts of society. The important thing is I have been part of, let's say, political developments when Visegrad Group was established by Václav Havel and others. And it was quite a long period when Visegrad Group was a kind of nice forum for meeting and discussing nice things. We were very long actually discussing that it needs to get higher at the political level. It was not the case. I was responsible for putting program of Visegrad meetings that time in 1990s, and it was very light, very pleasant, often, let's say, cultural or social issues, etc. And then it started, obviously, to gain an importance after the entry into the European Union of all the members, because it was a kind of potential power bloc of Central Europe within the European Union, and it was gaining the political relevance. But I have to say that it was much stronger between Czechia, Slovakia, and Hungary, not that strong for Poland. Poland was oriented in Europe, more individually to Germany and other big member states, and less with Visegrad. So, I mean, the building of the unified political stronghold of Visegrad within the European Union was a process, and it was not smooth. And what we observe now is, despite of the political, or not despite, but because of political differences in individual states, be it relation to the Ukrainian war, but it is much more also about the overall approach to the future of European Union and participation in the European cooperation. It is about the NATO, so there are big political questions. Relations to United States, for example, there is dramatic difference between positions of Slovakia, Poland, Hungary, etc. To these issues. So Visegrad is sustaining, but in my view, it is coming back to this original state: cultural, scientific collaboration, social issues. So things which are not that sticky, that problematic, and then it can work further. Nevertheless, and the last sentence is about scientific collaboration versus before. I am just very freshly, I have been successful with my team to gain financial support for scientific project from before, where Slovakia, Poland, and Czech Republic is participating. Absolutely no problem. This collaboration works perfectly, but I just want to say that scientific collaboration within Visegrad Fund is not a dominant part. It's just like small part of what Visegrad Fund is supporting and funding. So it's not like a scientific grant agency for the V4 countries, by far not. Nevertheless, it helps. So there is a certain, let's say, solidifying ground within Visegrad, which is not creating, but keeping and supporting the existing lines between the societies of the four countries.
Thank you very much, Ladislav, and I'm glad I have observed at least 5 more raised hands. So I would probably start with Magdalena GÓRA, please.
Thank you very much. I'll just introduce myself. My name is Magdalena GÓRA, and I'm Associate Professor in European Studies at the Institute for European Studies at the Jagiellonian University, that you can probably see a part of behind me. And I'm also representing my institution as a plenipotentiary for scientific cooperation. I would like to propose some points concerning how, in this long run, I think my institution is approaching a lot of the cooperation within the V4, trying to kind of navigate within those changing, but also impactful for our daily work, sort of political dimension of it. And I think we are trying to sort of approach this through first kind of craving a space in which we can still do, and I agree with my predecessor stressing that we maintain a very vivid both scientific and educational cooperation with our V4 partners. Moreover, we expanded. And we has been doing this despite the political pressures. How? First, I think it's this finding a space for cooperation, and sometimes we do it in a highly politicized themes, is also through kind of first mapping very well the interest and common interest between those actors that we cooperate with, which are other institutions, higher education institutions, or think tanks in the region, and sort of finding people and institutions that would like to work with us, and then learn and go, in a sense that if the cooperation is not necessarily working, then we sort of shift it somehow, right? So this is a kind of semi-technocratic route, if you wish, in a sense that you search for the people that are like-minded in this area, and then you kind of pursue this aims with those who work with this. And a second, and I think this our approach, I think, is going into the institutionalization. And I think one of Václav, I think, mentioned this, was building networks and sort of, but I would say institutionalization is even more than only building networks. It's applying for programs, for funds that can give us more sort of structure to cooperation, because the political pressure is, to me, sort of the institutionalization gives you a kind of resistance, kind of bullfor that can resist, because institutions stand, as most political science will know, right? They tend to stay. And if you have them even in a limited sphere, they give you a protection to some extent. One of our examples is a master degree program that we created with 4 institutions. This is master degree program in international relations, Europe from Visegrad perspective. It's funded continuously by Visegrad funds to give this scholarship to the students. It's done by University of West Bohemia in Pilsen in Czechia, University of Pécs in Hungary, Matej Bell University in Banská Bystrica, and us from Jagiellonian University. And sort of we keep mobility between the students, between students interested in the region, and between the scholars, right? And since we all have that interest in maintaining this program for years, it kind of pushes us to cooperate, right? Despite the difficulties that you may encounter on the way to this, right? The same as, I think, for the research programs, my colleague Ladislav Miko mentioned already, applying for Visegrad funds, but at the moment we have actually several different initiatives that are facilitating cooperation. For instance, there is a Vive Unisono initiative. This is an initiative by the national research funding institutions. And you can apply for the national funds for the special route, which is attractive for scholars and researchers if you have partners from those universities. So we for instance, closely cooperate in the networks and research program with Charles University or Brno University, in other constellations networks. And this also gives us a kind of advantage in applying also for the EU-funded resources, right? So this is kind of, all of this is still coming back to this, that it is in the interest of all of those actors, right? And then it pushes us to somehow to build this networks, alliances locally, because it gives us a better position and visibility very often in the European game for the funds, for the research initiatives. And one last comment on this. I think one of the very important long-lasting impact of the Visegrad cooperation on the level of academic and scientific cooperation is that we are increasingly see sort of the importance and the sort of significance. I think, again, it was mentioned in the Brno case, the Slovak Czechia context, but it's the one-to-one context and the student and teachers and scientists mobility. We have different initiatives, not only Visegrad fund for this, but for instance, we have this very interesting networks that is modeled a little bit on an Erasmus initiative, which is called CIPUS. Most of you probably are familiar with this. It's a Central European Exchange Program for University Studies that is actually bringing 15 member states in a Central East and broadly understood region that actually, and our students yearly are applying there. Our faculty members are yearly applying for the positions in CEPUS, building eventually sort of, if you want to build those contacts and maintain them, I think and kind of make them more immune to the political pressure, you need to make them real, person to person, based on an interest to pursue things that gives you strength. I'll stop here. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And I think we should welcome Veronika now. Yes, Veronika, please.
Thank you very much. Similarly to Václav, I'm also from NGO sector and academia as well. So I have both these perspectives. And when it comes to the focus that actually is working, that is the long-term cooperation at the borders, so-called cross-border cooperation that is supported by the EU programs. And in the environmental field, it is very fruitful, especially in the 3 areas. And this could be actually relevant also for Georgian case, because the first is biodiversity protection and conservation. The second is water management and flood management as well. And the third one is the expansion of renewable energy sources. which also includes trading electricity, and there are several important projects going on. Because, as you know, the Visegrad countries are not kind of environmental or climate leaders within the European Union. So this is something that we have in common, that we are kind of catching up our Western countries, and in the political climate where, as we are, the environmental topics are connected to the climate topics, which are very polarizing today. We all already heard that motorists are part of the Czech government, which are openly anti-climate and anti-green party. However, this is kind of something that is mainstreaming now also in other political parties. So it is not domain of far right or radical right or populist, or however we can label it. So it is kind of the mainstream. But what is working is really the local regional cooperation that is working for years. And we should not forget also about transnational cooperation of cities. There are many platforms, mission cities, Eurocities, that help going cities to the climate neutrality targets, which is very much connected, of course, to the environmental topics, because you cannot have climate without environment. And in that regard, quite famous was so-called Pact of Free Cities that was between 4 mayors of Visegrad countries. It was during COVID-19 pandemic, but they stressed also the cooperation in climate field. So this is something like in NGO sector, something that is working. Of course, firstly, there are cities that are willing to do climate policies, but then they are also joined by the others. That is kind of an optimistic scenario, but the cities that are doing climate policies, they see the improvements mainly in air quality and dealing with heat waves. So people really see tangible effects, and this is something that can be also transposed to other countries.
Thank you very much, Veronika. Professor Murman Margelashvili, please.
I'm Associate Professor of Ilia State University, and also I'm leading a think tank, Energy Policy and Sustainability think tank, World Experience for Georgia. We in Georgia are kind of used to be leaders. Some time ago, we were leaders and beacon of democracy, so-called, although there were some flaws in that democracy. And now I believe we are also leaders, and we are leading in the pace of reform, which is a pretty questionable reform. It is, to a great extent, it is consolidation of authoritarian rule, where the government and essentially one party are taking over all controls of the system. And it poses a new challenge to civil society, by all means, to scientific community, and so on. So we are not sure how we will navigate those changes and try to survive and preserve the ties with, external, our partner, educational and academic institutions. The change in the law of grants basically says that any money transfer from outside to inside Georgia, from any person to any person, provided this person can or intends to influence government or society, will be considered as a grant, and it has to be subordinated by and approved by the government. So that gives the government full control of activities of non-government organizations, and basically also those programs that scientific programs, cooperation programs that relate academic institutions to outside world. So I would suggest that it's a case study on the opposite for Visegrad countries to observe Georgia and to see how we will tried and how we'll manage to navigate these changes. And also, it can be also considered as a case study for observing what can happen if the populist or, autocratian rule gets established in the country. And what happens if the institutions get hollowed out of expertise, and how it can be navigated by the civil society. We are having great challenges now. We do not know how to survive, how to continue our activities. So this turbulent environment right now doesn't give us much possibility to project what will happen, but it is definitely very interesting. So we will try to get up and stand up to this challenge and to find a way for future. And we hope that we will have attention, support of our European and our international colleagues, so that we continue cooperation in a way possible. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor. And Lýdia GREŠÁKOVÁ, please.
Thank you. I'm a sociologist that is part of Slovak Academy of Sciences, but also Košice non-profit studio of architecture and sociology that deals with participatory processes, often working with other NGO sectors, climate organizations, but also municipalities. And I like very much what has been said so far, and especially by my predecessor, because everybody can feel that what is happening politically in Slovakia is very much similar to what Georgia experienced and is experiencing. But in these challenged political times, usually also civic society is getting more and more strong in opposition. And I think this is also what's happening here. But we too, in our Košice-based collective, feel that the future is very uncertain. And we don't know, for example, how this year will look like. Because I think thanks to Visegrad Fund, the alliances are being built. And I think for us especially, this is something that really helps us strongly to go on further and to see that everybody's somehow finding their own way into working in this atmosphere. But I'm always asking, like, for who are we working and with whom? Because here a lot has been said about academia, about NGO sector, but what we struggle with the most are state institutions, municipalities, and their capacities, because, for example, in Visegrad projects, we are trying to strengthen their capabilities, but they are just understaffed, and there is a lot of frustration going on in how to translate the new knowledge gained in the alliances into the practice, into the real practice. So this is still a struggle, although I'm not sure how it is in other countries. In Slovakia, almost in every city, there is a pro-climate civic organization, a collective, an NGO that is trying to build networks, and this is working very well. The solutions that municipalities currently have are very limited. But what we found out, for example, in our practice and working with other Visegrad 4 countries, which can also be helpful in our international discussions, is that in the illiberal Europe, we tend to find out hybrid solutions that are really not leftist nor right-wing, but are trying to somehow swim in between the dominant political systems quite successfully, and we somehow manage to survive very different political times. And this hybridity is something very unique to our region, and I think it's also happening in Georgia. And this is something to think about, or something important that we need to develop, maybe map further, gain more data about how do we do it actually, that we can survive in a times where civic association is pushed to a side, but still somehow manages to continue working, gaining data and helping out in the practice, whether it is working with the municipalities in the area of climate, energy measures, building efficiency, and the creation of reserves, for example, for water or water resources or renewable energy.
Thank you very much, Lýdia. Filip Koženek, please.
As a researcher, you can, compare one country to another and give some recommendations and some conclusions. And I think this initial momentum that was there kind of was carried over to the present, and we still have, organizations tend to still gravitate to one another in this space, in domains that are completely new. We've been approached, for instance, by Slovakian or Polish electric mobility associations that they want to do things in Czechia, just because it somehow naturally works very well in this context, because the countries are in a similar socio-economic standing in European terms. And then on environmental cooperation, specifically, of course, the geographical grounding and the shared borders create all sorts of challenges. I mean, there were issues with regard to water contamination, for instance, on the Polish-Czech border. This is something that has to be dealt with. But then there are, of course, also like positive examples where organizations or environmental organizations tend to take these trans-border issues up and work on them in a joint manner. I mean, in terms of technical collaboration, there are, of course, there is let's say, a higher than EU average level of collaboration still within the region. There is this practice of if there are environmental agencies, they tend to group together. Bottom line was that, of course, if you are in similar starting conditions, you face similar challenges. Of course, you want to get as much information as possible from countries facing a similar situation.
Thank you, Filip. As a moderator, I must apologize that we are running out of time, and I was planning standard closing remarks, but instead I decided to give floor to everybody else. So just in case you want to add anything, please do.
Alexander, I wanted to add two more points of advantages of scientific cooperation arise in times of political turbulence. The one is in the framework of South Caucasus, where significant changes are underway. We all know rapprochement between Armenia and Azerbaijan. Well, Georgia cannot play a role in the political reconciliation, but it could accelerate the melting of ice by offering a platform for trilateral scientific forum, inspired exactly by the V4 model. And when political agreements still remain difficult to reach, joint research and academic exchanges can keep lines of communication open, and there will be facilitating of political collaboration. So it's another track to diplomacy path. And third, last but not least, academic cooperation, scientific cooperation can also help building bridges within Georgia. In a conflict divided country, share the challenges in environment, agriculture, and disaster response create natural opportunities to engage with people on the other side of occupation line in Abkhazia and South Ossetia with their experts. And these discussions do not require political recognition or status negotiations. And this is something I have experienced firsthand while working on a conflict resolution. So this is another advantage of scientific cooperation that we can borrow example of V4.
Thank you very much, Dato. I absolutely agree. Ladislav, please.
I think the best and strongest links across the borders are developed irrespective of the political developments on the subject closely based issues. So, I mean, if you have particular interest of, I would say, I don't know, safety of food or environmental trans-border issues, these are the things where the scientific cooperation works best and sustains the political changes. And for example, when we speak about the environmental issues, there are also regional international agreements like Danubian collaboration or Carpathian collaboration, which is not only V4, but it is V4 plus Austria, for example, or some other countries. But nevertheless, these are the platforms where on the basis of the common interest on the particular subject of research or monitoring, there is a long-standing good cooperation which can be developed. So I am just like putting that as one of the options for the Georgian case, which is to operate in so complicated political framework that I think the only way, it is something like a role of sport or culture in the past, in the divided world, then the science can play a very similar when there is a common subject.
I would like to thank you very much for this exceptionally interesting discussion. Our next webinar will focus on economics and business, and I'm looking forward to seeing you in our future events.